Hi everybody, I'm Bill Sanders and this is WatchArtSci, the art and science of watch collection. Today what we're going to do is talk about researching your watch for two things. One is to save some money, and second of all is to find something really interesting, horologically speaking. But first what we're going to do is we're going to take a look at this fantastic watch of the week. It's a Chronometre Blue by F.P. Journe, and it's owned by Hindru Sutano. And for those of you who are unfamiliar with this watch, it's interesting in so many ways. First of all, it's made from tantalum, which is a very hard metal and very tough. So it's a kind of watch that you can take just about any place and sort of bang around. But at the same time, if you look at the back there, it has this solid gold movement based on a 1304 FP Journe caliber. And it has something, it's very much like my Souverain, with the exception that the Souverain has a power reserve indicator, but otherwise it's pretty much the same watch. It has the same movement. The double barrels are for when the watch is wound up, they're never totally tight. And so what happens is that they go from the same amount of power release from the beginning to the end. Now if they are totally tight, it'd be faster at the beginning and the end. And this is one solution for having constant force in a watch. Anyhow, love that watch. It's a favorite among collectors, and thanks, Hindru, for letting us show off your watch this week. Okay, now what we're going to take a look at, we're going to take a look at watch research. And for years, I've taught graduate and undergraduate research methods, and when people hear research, they go, "Oh, geez, that's really hard and everything else." Well, don't listen to them. Okay, to me, it's one of the most rewarding things you can do as a watch collector to find out about your watches. And there are going to be three things that I want to talk about in terms of watch research. And the first thing is to embrace surprises. Now, what that really means is that if you're wrong about something, that means you learn something new, and you're really important to treat watch research as you're going into something and you hope to discover something you don't know, or to find out about something you thought you knew and you learn something new. Okay, like maybe you'll find your watches, you didn't think it was worth anything, it's worth a fortune. That'd be the best surprise. Sometimes you think it's worth a lot and it's not so much so. So surprises go both ways, but you have to embrace surprises. And being wrong is, don't look at it as being wrong, look at it as learning something new. For doing good watch research, you can do crummy research, and there's a lot of that, believe me. Okay, second of all is that read Sherlock Holmes, for crying out loud. Everyone knows Sherlock Holmes. The excuse me, the current renditions of Sherlock Holmes don't exactly follow the stories of the original Sir Arthur Conan Doyle. Some of them have some glimpses of brilliance, but not a whole lot. Read Sherlock Holmes. Let me suggest two to start with. One is The Problem of Thor Bridge, and the other one is Silver Blaze. They both have the kinds of clues that you have to think about. You have to really, in doing good watch research, you have to be like Sherlock Holmes. Part of that too is you have to be relentless. That part is you never give up. You think, oh, here's a dead end. We'll talk about that a little more with the example that I have. Okay, the final part, it sounds like, oh, it sounds like a lot of work, and that's make notes. The way I make notes, I simply do a lot of cutting and pasting into a text editor, using Notepad or TextEdit on a Mac. what you do is you go on searching all over the place, and when you find something that's useful about the watch you're looking at, you can do a little copy and paste, and so you have some notes about where you found it. Because believe me, once you find it, it's very easy to lose. And when you're trying to bring everything together, it's nice to have them in a convenient place. Don't copy and paste everything. Just the parts that have the information that you need. Otherwise, too much information is as bad as no information sometimes. Okay, now what I want to do next is to go through an example of watch research. And I talked about it, I think, in a recent video about how I learned about once I got this, my Harry Windsor Premier X Center by Retrograde. It's a sort of a mouthful for a watch. Anyhow, this I told some of the stories, sort of like the big parts. Well, I found out this and I found out this, but let me try to go through the entire process, because I think the process will reveal what actually was involved in the research on this watch before I bought it and after I bought it. After I bought it, I actually spent more time finding out more and more about it. One of the things about Harry Winston, it was sold back in 2013 to Swatch, and the record keeping of watches like Patek Philippe, for example, they have incredibly good records, but Harry Winston, at least the way that watch collectors expect information to be handled, it seemed to be a little less so. Okay, anyway, I started the investigation with two clues. First of all, there was an interview with Max Buser in The Purist in 2002. And he mentioned that Roger Dubuis and Jean-Marc Viderec had created the first movement for them. And somewhere in the 90s, between 1989 and current day, I really didn't know that much about it at the time. Now, the next thing that I found out about was a comment by Dr. George Chiong. This was in a Watch Pro site, which is is like a forum. And what he said the initial pieces were Frederic Piguet 71P, 71P base until 1996. Then the GP 3000 was used until 2000. Well, I had seen some other things about the Girard-Perregaux, and so I thought, okay, well, this will be a starting place for me to find out what's in my watch. So what I did is that I got a diagram of the Girard-Perregaux 3100. Now, it wasn't the 3000, but I had seen 3106 mentioned as the movement, and so I thought, well, I'll try this one instead. So I took a look at it, and so I thought, well, okay, now I'm going to compare it with my watch. So I looked at the back of my watch, and the rotor was entirely different, but the other parts looked pretty good, and it was. The one on the Girard-Perregaux was sort of this scalloped movement after the center, I don't know what they call it, whatever the piece that holds it together. And so it looked different. So the next thing that I did was that I went after the, trying to find out whether Girard-Perregaux had made a rotor that looked like that. And I found out that they did. Now, this was done in 1995, September 13th, 1995. There was a diagram that had that date on there. GP was Girard-Perregaux. It's obsolete, probably. And So I finally had it, and I could see that the rotor looked like the one on my watch. So I was, I was pretty happy about that. And then looking at the diagram, the rest of it looked very similar to it. So so I felt pretty confident that I had, okay, so this is a Girard-Perregaux, it's not a Frederic-Piguet or something else. Now this is important because when I was going through the different forums and every place else you look, there was a guy who had a watch exactly like mine, and he was asking about it, and somebody said, well, it was what is it? An ETA. So it was an ETA, and maybe a Frederic Piguet. And I thought, wait a minute, ETA. I didn't know if the ETA had a retrograde. Well, so I'm gonna have to dig up ETA and find out if they had a retrograde or not. And they did, but that wasn't until 2007. Okay. And in fact, it was a very interesting retrograde. Longines had a watch that had some or they wanted to have retrogrades on it. And so, being owned by Swatch and having ETA movements, they said, look, we'd like a retrograde, specifically a Longines retrograde for our watch. And they made them one. And so it was, but like I said, this was in 2007. And what was going on here, everything indicated it was back in the early 2000s, before 2007, in other words, around 2000, 2001, so forth. Okay, so that's one of the things. When you're doing research, you're going to find people who are going to pop off about something. Like this guy, he figured, well, that's what it must be, and because so many other watches are. Now, in 2007, this was before Swatch owned Harry Winston. So I don't know why he decided that's what it must be, but he just did. Oh, I know what it was. Yeah, he said this. He said, well, it's a fashion watch, and you can't expect them to do anything special, which was, he could have been wronger about that, given the fact that that the first movement in Harry Winston watches was by Dubuis and Vitarec. So, I mean, you're going to run into this. When you're doing research, you have to filter out baloney. Now, I did check up to see if the if ETA had a retrograde, and found out that they at the time they didn't, but they did in 2007. And by the way, too, that I thought was sort of fun as well. The fact that Longines had ETA make one special for them. So that's another piece of horological information that I ran across. So while you're doing research on one thing, you can find out about a lot of other stuff too that's sort of fun. Okay, so I'm pretty sure that I'm all set with the movement, and so the only thing left is the module for the retrograde. And this was the hardest part. So I decided, well, I'm gonna send an email to Agenhor and see if they can help me out. Well, boy, did they ever help me out. I was sent a diagram of the it's called the AGH 2351, which is exactly the exact module that controlled the retrograde. And so I looked at my watch, and down here at the bottom, well, it's at the top here, but at the bottom of my watch, there's the date, and you can see the date window there. And this is like this, and it goes on top. In other words, the side out here, if they remove the I guess decoration on the dial, what would come up would be the Agenhor module for the retrograde. Okay, so now this was I looked and looked, and I looked at several different Agenhor ones that were out and available, but I didn't see one for my watch. Well, finally, I decided, well, I'll put it all together, and here it is. They have the caliber is Girard-Perregaux 3106, and then they have a .B1. I'm not sure what that is. And then they have the AGH 2351. And one of the things that I had tried to do with popsicle sticks and cardboard was to simulate a retrograde popping back using the snail cam. And so I was looking at this picture and I found the snail cam. There's the old snail cam there. You can see it on the one on the left, which is the one for the seconds. And that's the one that's going to be pretty busy. And then the one on the right, you have some other things that weren't, at least in that diagram. But there's a little button here. And what this button is for, a little push button. And the push button is used to set the day of the week. So if the days of the week somehow get goofed up, let's say it doesn't get wound and stops for a couple of days, then you're going to have to do it somehow. And I didn't exactly see it on the in the diagram, but it's probably some little thing that is at that angle is not visible. But anyway, so here I ended up with a watch that there wasn't a lot of information on, and the information that they had, in fact, one of the people who had the most information on it had a recent stroke. I couldn't believe it. And fortunately, Dr. Bernard Chang, he had given me some good information. And his final words were, well, if all else, you can try Geneva. And that's what I did. And that was where I got this wonderful help from the folks at Agenhor, to whom I am very, very grateful. Okay, now this is the one thing I'm trying to talk about is research. There are three things you really need in research. One is the expectation that you're never wrong, or if you're not so much wrong, it's this thing of discovery. And you have to keep an open mind. So, like, you're just looking for stuff and enjoy what you find. If it's not what you expect, even better, because then you learn something. Second of all, make it an adventure. Read Sherlock Holmes. Don't make this thing yucky. And another reason to read Sherlock Holmes, it's fun to see the reasoning. You have to really learn to look and be tenacious and follow and just sort of keep picking at something until you remove all of the falsehoods and noise, I'll put it that way, and get to what you really need. Finally, just keep notes. I know it sounds like, oh, that's no fun, it's keeping notes. Well, yeah, maybe not, but it's sort of like, you know, if you're mining for gold and you pick up one nugget at a time, you're going to put that in a little bag. That's what you do with notes. They're little nuggets that you put in a bag. All right, well, I'd like to hear your comments on this, what you have to say. And in fact, I'd like to hear any stories you have about some research that you did, and any other comments that you'd like to have. And on Sunday, we're having our next collection review. And of course, this is an invitation to subscribe if you'd like. All right, till next time, this is Bill Sanders and WatchArtSci, the art and science of watch collection.